Thank you all for attending. This is so crucial to be able to hear from the candidates in their own words. Thank you also to our co-hosts, the Silver Lake Reservoirs Conservancy and the Silver Lake Improvement Association. And I just wanted to make a couple of quick announcements. For those of you who are business owners, please feel free to join us at our next mixer. It's April 21st, and you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook and sign up for our newsletter for details if you go to our website, silverlakechamber.com. And first of all, I'd like to thank all the candidates for making the time to be here. We're really looking forward to hearing some great Q&A going on here. And Fatima will fill everybody in, but this is not meant to be a debate. It's meant to be a forum where we can hear from each one of you. Special thank you to our moderator, Fatima, who's taken on a big job. She is a realtor who's lived in the neighborhood in CD4, not 13, for 12 years now. She's also been a board member of the Chamber for the past couple of years. She has been a member of the League of Women Voters, board member of the League of Women Voters for 10 years, and has been the president for the last 2.5 years. She's also been a moderator for dozens of candidate forums and is notorious for running a tight and impartial ship. So thank you, Fatima. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Hello and welcome to the CD13 Candidates Forum. As Natalie mentioned, my name is Fatima Malik and I'm moderating this forum using the guidelines from the League of Women Voters, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that's been around for 102 years. And while the League is not a sponsor of this forum, it's important to note that they never support or oppose candidates at any level of government. In the same spirit, our host organizations will not endorse a candidate for the CD13 election. I want to take a moment and explain the format to the audience. All candidates have signed off on forum guidelines and therefore agreed to abide by them. So the presentations, as you heard from Natalie, will be strictly confined to issues. Personal attacks or direct comparisons are not permitted. The order of opening statements was determined by randomization tool just prior to this event. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a confusion, so 2 of the candidates missed that part of it, but I will say the order is Kate, is it Pinutes?
Yes,
yes.
You got it right.
First, then Steve Johnson, then Hugo Soto Martinez, and Mitch O'Farrell will be last. There will be a timekeeper who will indicate when the speaker has 10 seconds left. And when that time has elapsed, candidates are expected to promptly relinquish the floor. So as you can see, I'm explaining the format. I will introduce the candidates. Each candidate has 1 minute to make an opening statement. They will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. We have quite a few questions. So we have made each question, each answer will be 1 minute to answer. And then afterwards, we will have a rapid fire question portion, which will be 25 seconds. And as I said before, 2 minutes for the closing statement. We will have a break for about 10 minutes at 8 o'clock. So the candidates can get a quick drink of water and rev back up again. And then, of course, as you probably heard from me, to preserve impartiality during the forum, campaign literature, other paraphernalia may not be present on camera or in the chat prior to or during the forum. There will be a Q&A box for the attendees to put their questions in. I will take a look at them as quickly as I can and try to combine some of the questions. If I don't get to all of them, because we already have so many questions that have come in, please understand. And then on April 1st, candidate information can be added to votersedge.org, which is the League of Women Voters website. I encourage you to visit votersedge.org for all your voting information, including getting information on ballot items such as candidates, measures, who supports them, and check where and when to vote, and even keep track of your choices and other important links like how to track your ballot. So let's get started. Okay, so the first candidate to give her opening statement is Kate Pinutes. So whenever you're ready, Kate.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I am Kate Pinus. I'm running for Council District 13. I'm a lawyer who has represented everyone from asylum seekers to retailers to Fortune 500 companies. I'm a third generation Angelino, and I've worked in City Hall for the last few years as a policy advisor to Councilmember Mike Bonin. One of the reasons CD13 is so special is because of you, the wonderful small businesses that help create our community. And for too long, the city has put up barriers that make it difficult for you to just make a living for you and your family. From outdated land use restrictions to bureaucratic processes that are basically nearly impossible to navigate. It's time that we make a city that actually works. And then, of course, over the last 2 years, you as business owners have had an impossible job of managing economic as well as life and death decisions. And from listening, I understand that what you need now is a government that will partner with you and will, especially at this moment, provide you with certainty. I'm excited for the opportunity to show you that I am that straightforward candidate tonight, and that I have the necessary experience to really serve you. So thank you.
We're having a minor difficulty with the timer, so I'm going to be, did you hopefully heard the sounds? Please listen to the sounds. Didn't hear the sounds? Okay. I'm going to bring it back in. So I'm going to bring it back in. So just continue, but it's going to be a second.
So just so everybody knows, when I noticed that the timer wasn't working, I have a little emergency timer off to the side here, and you were exactly 1 minute. So good job.
Great.
In case you saw me panicking and rushing over here. So if you'll give us just a moment, let's just see if we can get that timer back on. 1 second.
We can go ahead and start, I think, and I can keep time. I've got my iPad here with, oh, there you go.
I would prefer for it to be a little bit more transparent. So let's just hold for a second.
It's not working.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I can do this. Does everyone trust me to do the?
Yes.
Let me do it from my side. Okay, next we have Steve Johnson, and then just let me know when you're ready.
Okay, so thank you to the Silver Lake Chamber of Commerce, Conservancy, the Improvement Association, Fatima, Natalie, and Adam for putting on this event. My name is Steve Johnson. I'm an Air Force veteran, a sergeant with the LA County Sheriff's Department, and a proud gay Black man. We participated in several forums. However, this is the one that I've really been looking forward to because this is my opportunity to speak directly to my neighbors here in Silver Lake. This community and neighbors like you is why I'm running for city council. Local government has failed us. Special interests have had their way with City Hall for far too long. Now those same interests, political cronies and insiders are pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars into this race to keep that control, while funneling money away from the programs that work and into the pockets of consultants and bureaucrats. It's time we have a council member that puts our neighborhoods, our small business owners and residents first. I look forward to the opportunity to share my vision and plan and to ensure that Silver Lake is a thriving place to live, work, and raise a family.
Thank you, Steve. And next is Hugo Soto Martinez. Mr. Martinez, Mr. Soto Martinez, anytime you're ready.
Thank you so much, Fatima. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I spent the last 15 years in this district organizing the very essential workers who banged on pots and pans for it. I've been to their homes, I've shared in their deepest struggles, but also their dreams for the future. I know better than any other candidate what the working people of this district need and also how to win it for them. I've organized everyone from immigrant housekeepers to aspiring actors waiting tables. I've gone up against some of the biggest private equity corporations in the world and won wage increases, family healthcare, and respect on the job. I've worked in the city to pass landmark legislation like regulating illegal Airbnbs and COVID worker protections. I've also won national campaigns like flipping Arizona for Biden and leading field offices with Stacey Abrams to win both Georgia Senate seats. Now I want to win for all of us who in our hearts know that LA is going in the wrong direction. We cannot rely on those who got us into this mess to get us out of it. And hopefully I get to show what I'm about tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hugo. And Mitch O'Farrell, you're up next.
Thanks, Fatima. I care deeply about the people and neighborhoods that I am so privileged to represent, and I wake up every single morning inspired to always do more. I came into this role organically through local neighborhood activism here in Glassell Park, where I've lived for 30 years. I care about Silver Lake, its reservoirs and parks, its historic neighborhoods, and the amazing diversity from one block to the next within this incredible community. I've transcended great odds to bring the kind of change the residents of this district demanded when I was first elected, but challenges in bringing change have never deterred me in my entire life. Through consensus building, I helped craft and approve the minimum wage increase back in 2015 and ensured it was tied to the CPI. The project was so carefully crafted that the state followed, barring the template that we created. I led on enacting the city's eviction moratorium related to loss of income due to the emergencies declaration and ensured that it would be extended for 1 year after the declaration ended. Thanks again for hosting this forum, and I look forward to the discussion.
Okay, perfect. Since we don't have a timer, we're going to do the questions. And I will keep my sound on so you can hear the beep on my end, unless the timer has come through for us. I think not. Okay, let's get started because like I said, we have a lot to get through. Once again, this is 1 minute. I'm using a Google timer, so I'm afraid you won't get the little warning sign, but maybe I'll wave or do something, but I think you'll be fine. I have faith in you. Okay, great. So, so how we're going to do it is, so for example, Kate went first with her opening statement, Steve went second. So Steve will be the first person to answer the question and it will go through from there. Any questions? Okay. All right, great. The first question. Tell us about a couple of environmental concerns that you'd like to address as council member and some specific solutions that you'd propose. You'll give me just a moment, Steve, to set up the timer. Okay, go ahead.
So our state plans to ban the sale of new gas cars by 2035, as traditional gas vehicles are phased out for electrical vehicles, which will obviously improve the quality of our roads and our air and the health of Angelenos. Electrical vehicles are obviously cleaner burning and do not require gas and oil and other conventional, as like the other conventional counterparts. So I would encourage increased tax incentives for electric vehicle owners to promote this conversion. I also would seek to build more electric charging ports, and I'd like to make LA the #1 city in which to own an electric vehicle. The other issue that I'm super passionate about is micro mobility, which is a great sustainable alternative that doesn't cost a lot. But safety is my biggest concern with micro mobility with regard to pedestrians and traditional motors. So I would leverage vehicles such as e-bikes and e-scooters through safety codes, resulting in stiffer penalties for the non-use of head protection. So those are two ideas that I have.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, same question, Hugo. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I got it. Thank you so much, Fatima.
Sure.
Well, look, I think we have to, this is a great question. I think we have to start where the most urgency and where people's lives are being hurt right now. In District 13, as of the last redistricting, there were 500 uncapped wells spewing methane and gas into the residents of Echo Park. To this day, not one has been capped. Even though the federal government, Joe Biden, have been begging us to take this federal money to cap those wells. And so I would immediately get that money and protect the people who are being hurt right now. And I think that's the thing that requires urgency now. And I think something more forward-looking, the Hollywood Community Plan is being debated right now. One of the things that has not happened on this community plan is the electrification of buildings. We know that we got to stop burning fossil fuels. And so electrifying buildings is a thing that we must do to be more forward. We know that buildings consume the most energy. And so we gotta go where we can get the most bang for our buck.
Thank you, Hugo. And next would be Mitch, please.
As the City Council's chair of the Energy Environment Committee, I am leading in the transition of the LA 100 plan to get us to complete renewable carbon-free energy by 2035. What I do as chair of this committee in the next 4 years will set us on that road. And it is an imperative and not a goal. We're on our way, and it takes experience and the ability to build coalitions to make it happen. And that's what we're doing. I'm also leading in the electric vehicle master plan that we pushed through council already, with reports coming that will point the way so we can electrify the entire city fleet, including all of our maintenance vehicles. I'm working on the largest clean power purchase in the city's history with the Navajo Nation. Being of Native American heritage myself, President Nez of the Navajo is my friend, and this will be the largest power purchase of completely clean energy in the city's history as we help the Navajo Nation transition into photovoltaic. And then lastly, the plastic ban is coming. I led with the straws on request
Thank
a few
you,
years
Mr.
ago,
O'Farrell.
and that's
you.
coming in the next term. Thank you.
Thank you. I know it's a little tough to hear me cut you off, but we have to keep things fair.
As politicians like to talk, right? Okay.
Yes, go ahead, Kate, you're next.
Yeah, we have an amazing opportunity in our city. You know, Los Angeles has the largest city-owned, municipally owned utility company in the nation. So we have such an incredible opportunity to move off of fossil fuels faster than any other. And it is, you know, we have great plans in Los Angeles. You know, we had this amazing LA 100 study that was produced, but we actually need to implement it. And I have experience in City Hall negotiating those kinds of relationships. And part of that, of course, as Ugo mentioned, is decarbonizing our building, is electrifying our buildings. That's a huge piece of what we need to do. And it's going to take a lot of work to bring all of our community members along in that process. And then, of course, we have to reimagine our city and how we get around. I'm very excited by, you know, putting in place an interconnected series of protected bike lanes because we have a flat and sunny city. And if we really want to get off of fossil fuels, we're going to have to rethink how we move around our city. And I can't wait to get on a bike when we have protected bike lanes.
Thank you, Kate. Set this. Okay. And Steve, you're next.
I already answered.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Hold on. See what happens when you're trying to juggle everything? Give me 1 second. Okay, great. So the next question. All right. Do you believe that there are green space inequities? If so, how would you address this? If not, why?
I think it's me, Fatima.
Was I muted the whole time?
Just
Did
as
you hear my question?
I did, but
okay, go ahead whenever you're ready.
No, I don't believe there is green space equity. I mean, I think the district borders Griffith Park, which is a great resource. I hike there all the time. But the reality is, if you go more into the poor working class neighborhoods, that simply doesn't exist. And I think one of the things that certainly doesn't exist is the tree canopies. We know that has a microclimate effect on how people interact with it. I mean, I walk my dog, I live in East Hollywood, but I walk my dog to Los Feliz because there's not enough green space for my dog. And so when I talk to neighborhoods that live along 101, you know, there's a lot, they don't have access to those spaces. And I know that there's a challenge because land is obviously very expensive. But I think another example of this is, you know, we talk about equity in green space, right? Street vendors currently are banished from Echo Park Lake. Those are folks making their living who have worked very hard or now cannot work in that space. And so the inequities don't only come not only a lack of being able to play and recreate, but also to make a living on those green spaces. So no, I don't think we have it, not for working people.
Thank you, Hugo. Okay, next, Mitch O'Farrell.
There's definitely not enough green space equity, which is why I've been working on that since my very first weeks in office, when we renovated the Echo Park Lake and Park and spent $47 million through Prop O, a grant which I helped secure. And the park is once again clean, safe, and secure. And when we renovated it, we doubled its tree canopy. Since then, we have planted more street trees than any of my predecessors by double, all through the district. So we need more parks. I built pocket parks. I've built community gardens, and we need many more, but we need to support our parks and open spaces. They are for everyone. And that is what I have done since being in office. And that's what we'll do, especially with our careful approach to the future of the Silver Lake reservoirs and what that future looks like. And the community will be at the center of that decision making.
Thank you. Okay, now our next question, 1 second.
I think you skipped a few of us.
Yeah, you skipped me.
Okay, it's okay. I didn't mean to be accusatory. It's hard to, especially when the timer's not working.
No, that's okay. 1 second. Okay, so next we have Kate and then Steve. Okay, Kate,
Yeah.
Go ahead. Let me set the timer really quick.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. There we go.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fatima. And thank you for doing a great job with a lot of moving parts. So yes, of course, I mean, anyone who looks around Los Angeles knows that there isn't equity when it comes to green space. And yes, of course, we need those street trees and we need that canopy. And that's a huge piece of also the how we adapt, unfortunately, to climate change. But we don't just need street trees, we also need to take care of the street trees that we have, because we plant them and then we basically let them die by not taking care of them. So we have to be thoughtful about how we do that. And with regards to parklets, yes, we need parklets, but before the pandemic, it was virtually impossible to get a parklet unless you had like $100,000. And so it's not just about creating a particular parklet, but it's about cutting red tape to make it easier in general to build parklets. And that's the kind of work that I'm interested in doing the behind the scenes nitty gritty work. Great, thank you.
All right, Steve, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Fatima. So absolutely 100%, our city does have inequity with regard to green space, and it even ties into how we use our mobility. With regard to addressing these inequities and the mistakes of the past, I think a first step would be to acknowledge the mistakes and to not only those impacted, but to the city as a whole. I think we need to educate Angelenos about these disparities and create awareness. Innovations in tree planting and placement are ways in which we can also address inequity. Providing all Angelenos with affordable, safe, sustainable green space solutions is a major way to right the economic and environmental discrimination of the past. We absolutely do have the heat island effect, which exists here in Los Angeles, located in predominantly BIPOC neighborhoods. That's undisputable. So my plan would be to counter this effect using a portion of our budget to utilize increase the tree, to increase not only tree canopies, but train and bus.
So that's my magic mute button. So when I ask you to stop, you do have to stop. Okay, thank you, Steve. All right, now that I've gotten everybody for the second question, let's go on to the third question. And these are, once again, the questions that have been submitted prior to this event by constituents. With the success of the Echo Park fence, give your thoughts on keeping a perimeter fence with flexible access and nighttime closure at the Silver Lake reservoirs. And we will start with Mitch in just one moment while I reset this. And once again, thank you for your patience. I wasn't planning on doing both. So, please. All right, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Well, we are in the beginnings of a community conversation. The community will decide on the future of how we keep the park safe, clean, and secure. And if that means some sort of attractive fence or not, that will be the decision that the community makes. One thing is for sure, the park is safe, clean, and secure. Families have come back in droves. Quinceañeras are being done. Graduations are being conducted. Women can jog in the park alone once again, and seniors are taking strolls. It's an amazing place. It's a historic landmark. It is a treasured, high-valued park, the crown jewel of the city's park system. It will stay that way, and the city will follow the community's guide in how to keep it safe, clean, and secure moving into the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Kate, whenever you're ready.
Thank you.
Hold on, let me reset. Okay, go ahead.
So of course we want a park that everyone can use and that is safe and as Councilmember O'Farrell said, is clean and secure. That's something we all want, and I don't think that that's up for dispute. But I don't see the fences doing that, and I talk to community members all the time who are telling me that they don't feel like the fence is what's keeping them safe or is, you know, preventing homelessness. It is, and so I would advocate for bringing down the fence, because it's so sad looking at our community and seeing it as all gated up. And I've seen circumstances, you know, I've heard from people who have felt more unsafe because of the fence, because they felt locked in by it and haven't been able to find an outlet. And so there's such an opportunity in Echo Park, and I could go on and on about lots of different things that we could do, but I am listening to community.
Thank you, Kate.
Saying that they don't want the fence.
Thank you. Okay. Next is Steve.
Thanks, Fatima. So this is something that I'm super passionate about. I do not think the fence should be removed. And I know this because while we did our certification to get on the ballot, we knocked on literally 1,000 doors in Silver Lake. The community told me, their words, that they did not want the fence removed. Most overwhelmingly, that's what we were told, and I agree with that. So as an individual who frequents the lake area, I'm intimately familiar with this precious space. I frequent it regularly with my husband and my dog, and often on our bikes, if you can believe that. So the over pedestrianization and the mobility constraints run very counter to preserving this precious wildlife space and the ecosystem that is Silver Lake. So quite simply, the needs of commercialism, residents, you know, those have to be balanced. And additionally, our neighbors closest to the lake must have a total and complete buy-in to any type of revitalization or movement at the park. So as I said, I don't support the removal of the fence. Thank you.
Don't let me use my mute button. Okay. All right. Thank you, Steve. And finally, the same question, Hugo.
Yes, thank you, Fatima. There's nothing, obviously I agree with folks who are saying about keeping people safe, but we have to be very mindful of the rhetoric that we're using when we talk about keeping people safe. The same rhetoric about building a fence was built by the former president of this United States when used against immigrants fleeing war-torn countries. Now I get it, we have to keep people safe. But the fence, to me, is not a success. It's a symbol of the largest failure on homelessness policy this city has ever seen. We want to keep people safe. We invest in people's community, jobs, resources, and mental health. The fence is a symbol of division. It is carceral, and I don't believe it should stay in that community. And the residents that I talk to say it's ugly, it is carceral, and it's not appealing to the eye. And so I do not think that was a success, and I would make it a priority to remove it, obviously with community input, but I think the right people will prevail on this issue.
Thank you, Hugo, and thank you all for getting your thoughts in within 1 minute. I know it's difficult, and I very much appreciate it. Okay, the next question, and we will start with Kate. Traffic is obviously a big issue in Silver Lake. What happened to the Slow Streets project? And because I don't know if that can be directed towards all of you, since not all of you are involved in it, let's talk about traffic in Silver Lake and your plans too.
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked in City Hall. I was there when we were implementing slow streets. Some of the first communities that did it, that got to do it, were over on the west side, where I was working. And we need many more of those street calming, features. We need to make those permanent. But generally, in terms of traffic, if we're going to cut down on traffic, we need new solutions. You will hear this time again, interconnected bike lanes that actually get us to those centers of commerce without necessarily using our car. And at the same time, maybe shifting it so we have slanted parking spaces in certain places, so that it actually, you add some parking spaces while you take others away. And then we need to get out of our own way in the city. In terms of coordination, you as business owners should know that when work is being done on the street, so that you can plan accordingly. And we're not good at that coordination right now. And that's the kind of work that I'm interested in doing. I've worked on the public right-of-way reservation system, and that's the kind of work that I'm interested in making sure it's easier for you to do business.
Thank you, Kay. Steve, the same question.
Thank you. So, one measure that we can enact more strongly is to slow traffic. This helps pedestrians, it helps our bike lanes, it makes things far more safer. A simple decrease of only 5 miles per hour can significantly impact safety. And with slower speeds, we have better reaction times. And it's well known with regard to mobility systems, when you have it safe enough for an 80-year-old and an 8-year-old, you've hit the mark. And I'm going to tell y'all very honestly, my 70-year-old aunt feels very unsafe riding a bike. She's probably not going to get a bike, and feels extremely unsafe crossing the street near sunset. So we need to make efforts to slow traffic down, but also implement structures along the sidewalk to meet that mark. Thank you.
You're on mute, Fatima.
I have quite a few screens going. Hugo, you're next.
Yes, thank you for the time. Well, I'll tell you what happened, Fatima. The plan was never implemented. In 2015, the council voted on the mobility plan of 2035, and to this point, only 7% of it has been implemented. I would encourage folks to read that plan, the Mobility 2035 plan. Beautiful plan about how to incorporate protected bike lanes, slow streets, make pedestrian friendly, but the reality is it hasn't been implemented. And so I think that, and right now there's an initiative, people are collecting signatures to make it mandatory for things to be implemented in the district. So I think we just have to do what we already voted on. We voted on this 7 years ago. And so it's just been a lack of inaction on the current council that we have right now. So let's just do what we voted on doing. And I think that will lower traffic, make pedestrian safety, and make it more encouraging for people to ride their bikes.
Thank you. And then Mitch is next.
Thank you. Road diets have to be very, very carefully considered. And it takes a lot of community involvement, because there have been so many road diets that have been installed and have been gigantic fails. So we have to be really careful about that. We always have to strike the balance between traffic and pedestrian access. My priority has always been safe pedestrian access. That's why we did the whole streetscape around Michel Terena School pre-pandemic. That's why we closed that tunnel and widened the sidewalk, added bump outs. Safety around our schools has always been the most important thing for me. Now, with protected bike lanes, we have an engineering study on the Sunset for All, a grassroots group who wants to see protected bike lanes around the existing bike lanes all along Sunset Boulevard. That engineering study will inform us on choices we can then make that the community can weigh in on, and we can see how they feel.
Thank you. Okay, got everyone on that question. The next one is, what can you do to reduce or streamline City Hall building regulations? And we will start, looks like we now have a timer, a large timer. There we go.
Sorry about that. I was trying something, and I know it's possible, but it's going to take a second for the settings.
Okay. Now Steve will go first on this question. Steve, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please. Yeah.
What can you do to reduce or streamline City Hall building regulations?
Yes. So this question is awesome because it directly relates to why we haven't been able to build a supply of housing to meet the needs of our unhoused and low income neighbors. So with regard to that, I'm a business major from USC, so I'm the perfect person to respond to this. But with regard to the business model that myself and my team have created, what we've come up with is specifically with regard to lower income housing, streamlining that process involves having social change venture capital investors, churches and property owners, and nonprofit organizations. They actually do it better. There's too much bureaucracy at City Hall, and that's why it takes 10 to 20 years to implement the current plan that the incumbent's doing. We won't meet the mark at that pace. Homelessness is a very complex issue, so why not just streamline the process? You can rely on me as a city council member to be the hugest ally to make it more effective and efficient.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's pause for a moment. Adam, can we make sure that the clock doesn't pop up like that again? We just need to make sure that each candidate is able to say their statement clearly.
Absolutely. Sorry about that.
Thank you. All right. Next, Hugo, would you like me to repeat the question or?
Yes, please, Fatima. And also, if you don't mind, can you like throw up like a 5-second warning?
Will you see me if I go like 10, if I do this?
Did that for me, it would be incredibly helpful. Thank you so much.
Okay. How about 10 seconds? I'll do that.
Thank you so much.
Because I don't have 15 fingers. Okay. The question is, what can you do to reduce or streamline City Hall building regulations? And whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think one of the biggest things we can do is, as much as possible, take it out of the hands of the council members to make the decisions on this. I mean, not only would this make it go faster, but as people have been following the LA Times, I mean, this has been the source of massive corruption in the city. People are literally in jail because of this. And so I would make it more easier to build, take the discretion out of the council member on some of the buildings. We need to make affordable housing by right. Why did the affordable housing developers, which we know we are 500,000 units short in the city, why should they have to jump through hoops to build housing that essential workers need? And so make that by right. And also just reduce the bureaucracy. We know that sometimes these takes way too much time. And so I think if we do all those three things, would be incredibly helpful. It's not the end all be all, but it certainly takes a lot of the impediments that we currently have right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, next is Mitch, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Communities and developers need certainty in the approval process, that is for sure. We do have streamlined affordable housing production through SB 1818, SB 330, Measure JJJ. Those are all affordable housing incentives, which we have enacted across Hollywood and other parts of the district, which is why, since taking office, we've built more covenanted affordable housing outside of downtown Los Angeles than anywhere else in the city. And I'm very proud of that record. We've also streamlined the ability to build transitional shelter and permanent supportive housing long before HHH was ever even approved. So this district has a tradition and a culture of protecting renters, building covenant affordable housing, and protecting the rent stabilization ordinance that we have and those protected by it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, and then Kate.
Great, thank you. So all of this red tape in LA's politics of building development costs money and means that it takes too much time to be building those buildings that we so badly need because of the housing crisis that we are in. and it takes time and money because you have to hire lobbyists and lawyers and all of that to combat the fact that all of these decisions are in the hands of politicians, when we need to be taking those decisions out of the hands of politicians. What we need are good policies set by politicians who understand, community leaders who understand what the community needs. And what we need 500,000 more units in Los Angeles. Many of those need to be affordable, and covenanted affordable. And so we need to take it out of the hands of the elected officials, and make sure that you have that certainty.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate.
and it costs less money.
Thank you. Okay. Next question. Please tell us what you've accomplished or what you hope to accomplish to protect and help wildlife animals as they coexist with us. And then the first person to go is Hugo, whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you so much. So I served on the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council for many years. And so one of the committees that I was involved in the most was the recreational committee. And so I think that right now, and a lot of that was educating the public on the diversity of Griffith Park, how the human footprint on sort of that area also had an effect, educating folks on the river and the effects of the development of the river. And so I think a lot of it we got to protect our beloved P22. There's a lot of things that are right in our backyard, but I think a lot of it comes down to education. I think people are not aware of how the human footprint is affecting the wildlife in this district. And so I would do massive outreach on this subject, because I think once people understand the beauty of our largest urban park in the country, I think people would appreciate and be more protective of it. So that's the outreach that I would do.
Thank you. Next is Mitch, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I am a lover of all animal life, wildlife and domestic animals. Wildlife and coexistence in Los Angeles is essential, and there is a golden opportunity with the future of the Silver Lake Reservoir Complex. You already have wildlife built in that needs to be protected, and I feel that the community will absolutely ensure that what they'll support there are local wildlife and habitat restoration. I'm a big believer in conservation easements as it relates to developments in canyons and hillsides. I banned snares in the city of Los Angeles after some very graphic deaths of coyotes and even domestic animals. Believe it or not, snares were still legal when I took office. I will continue supporting and uplifting wildlife in everything I do.
Thank you. Kate? Oh, no, I'm sorry. 1 second. Yes, you're next, Kate. Yes.
Great. So yeah, there's so much that we need to do in our community. So at the Silver Lake Reservoir, on the river, right? And we have a lot of wonderful plans, like LA's Green New Deal sustainability plan that has this pilot for LA's first, wildlife corridor. And that's great. We have all these wonderful plans in Los Angeles, but then something like the wildlife ordinance stalls because we don't put in the money for it. And I understand how you get that work done, because I have worked on the Budget and Finance Committee in City Hall, and I understand that you need to put that money in right in the budgeting process, and that happens once a year. And so that's the kind of work that I'm interested in doing, is not just saying that I'm interested in protecting wildlife, but actually getting that money into the budget when the time comes every year.
Thank you, Kate. Steve? Oh, Steve, you're muted.
Okay, so two things with regard to this great question. So, if you spend any time in Silver Lake, which a lot of people don't know this, even some who do live there, that there's an amazing and thriving wildlife corridor at Silver Lake. Most people don't know that. So again, I'm vehemently opposed to removing the fence simply because it will impact that wildlife area. And so that's one thing I definitely will support. Anything that seeks to commercialize or add more vehicular traffic to the area, I'm vehemently opposed to. And I also live off the LA River, and I love the river. It's an amazing asset that we have in the city. With regard to the LA River, I do think homeless encampments directly impact the river. A lot of my neighbors, maybe some of you on this Zoom, maybe don't frequent the river because of the homeless encampments. And we need to rapidly house our unhoused neighbors and get solutions for them to get them off the river into housing so that we can all enjoy this beautiful space. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay. Next, what do you think about turning Silver Lake into a historic overlay zone to preserve the feel and the look of the neighborhood? And we are starting this one with Mitch, whenever you're ready.
I think it's a great idea, but the state has just made that more difficult with some of their affordable housing ordinances that supersede local control. It's not impossible, but we work with several neighborhoods. We have several historic preservation overlay zone districts in the 13th, and I'm very proud and protective of those. So it's a bit of a tougher trick to actually create a new one, but it's not impossible. Findings are a little more difficult to make. And so we have to strike that balance between how do we protect our historic neighborhoods, but also how do we produce more housing, covenant affordable, et cetera. And that's the task that we have to address. And I have the experience to do just that.
Thank you. And next is Kate. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the answer, right? Is that we are restricted in that work right now, and putting in those historic overlays. I do think that what we need to be doing is working towards keeping the things that we love about our community while also sort of shepherding in this new moment of change in Los Angeles. And so we need to be being creative about how we keep those aspects of what's historical and beautiful about Los Angeles while still creating more housing.
Thank you, Kate. Steve, whenever you're ready.
So I'm a huge preservationist. I love culture. I'd like to keep the integrity of our neighborhoods intact, but I also realize that we do have a low supply of affordable housing. And so there needs to be a balance, as was stated earlier. I definitely agree with that. Unfortunately, at the state level with SB 9 and SB 10, these types of things are going to directly impact how we maintain that preservation. With regard to those legislative initiatives, I think as a city council member, when elected, I'm going to put in place things that we can do to limit that. For example, with SB 9, you can actually have one property divided up into 8 properties. I mean, you can't make this up. So there definitely needs to be some type of an infrastructure limit on that, of traffic, of parking minimums. So again, it needs to be a balance, but we can definitely do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And then Hugo, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Fatima. Look, I think the reason somebody submitted this question was because they see how the neighborhood has changed. You know, I've been in this neighborhood for 15 years and I've seen how much it's changed. And so this question is an act of, I don't want to say desperation, but it's an act of, can we do the last thing to preserve this neighborhood? Because we've seen how the luxury development has come in here. And so look, and again, the overlay zones exist in different parts of CD13. And so I think, but I agree that we do have to, but the reason we've gotten to this point is because people feel that there's no other way to preserve their neighborhood. And so I think in asking about development, the one thing I can commit to is to have that conversation, understand how do we maintain the nature of the community, And I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I think that's decision would require a lot of community input, because we got to see what, if we do something, what effects could it have on some of the housing we desperately need in the district.
Fatima, you're muted.
The Department of Water and Power was given the green light by the city to build an office building and parking lot on reservoir property right in the middle of the Silver Lake residential area. Was the community properly notified about this? If not, why? If you're not involved with this, what would you do about this? And that's you, Kate.
Yeah. One of the things the city does terribly is notifying anyone of anything. And that's something I'm very passionate about changing. You know, the other day I had a Department of Water and Power employee come to my house to tell me that my power was going to be out the next day, or I guess probably in a week. And that's the kind of communication that we need for a lot of these types of things. You know, we need people actually going door to door, providing information to people about what's going on in their communities. And that's the work of a council member's office to understand when that's necessary. And that's the kind of work that I'm interested in doing, is being communicative like that.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Steve, same question.
So with regard to this, you know, as I canvassed our district, it's a common thing I hear. For example, with El Centro de Pueblo, this is a low-income youth program. These women who have their children there are enraged because the council member will not tell them about a homeless shelter being built next to it. They are enraged. But I hear this, it's a theme, as Kate said, district-wide in particularly, especially with Echo Park Lake. So it was intentional. I think it's not appropriate, but I think that if you don't have any disagreement, things move a lot smoother. When elected, you have my guarantee and my commitment that I will work intimately with community for whatever's built. I won't leave people out of the loop. I won't do things overnight in a clandestine fashion. That's not how city politics should work.
Thank you, Steve. Next is Hugo, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Fatima. Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear about this. First time I'm hearing about it. I'm not surprised. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've heard residents say, you know, something happens without them knowing. And look, I would say that I've been a union organizer for 15 years. And the way I operate is that you can't escape the people you represent. When I go into these 500 worker hotels, I go into every single crevice. I visit the graveyard shift. I visit the 2-people apartment, the departments, the 3-person apartments, because part of what I've learned in the union is that you have to be held accountable to people, make yourself available, allow people to question your decisions and be transparent. And so I'm very happy to say that we have over 900 volunteers on our campaign, but we are inculcating this ethos immediately, saying we're going to involve the community. Once we win, we're going to keep this structure so that people have access to the council. And so it's something we're trying to remedy, certainly in this race.
Thank you, Hugo. Mitch, same question.
It's absolutely untrue that the folks at El Centro de Pueblo did not know about the plan for the 108 units of covenant affordable housing going on their lot. It's just absolutely untrue. My office has worked very closely with them and continues to do so. In relation to the portable offices and parking lot at the Silver Lake Reservoir in Council District 4, the lake is split in 2 council districts. I was adamantly opposed to it from the beginning. I still am. I'm hoping to work with Nithya Raman so that we can ensure that it is a temporary presence at the Silver Lake Reservoir Complex, because that whole area needs to be part of what the community wants to see in the future and the vision for that area. We knew going into the master planning process that my office has led that that was the plan. Not everyone heard about it, obviously, but through meetings with hundreds of people at a time, that was not kept in the dark. But it's in a different council district, but I would like to see it go. And its location was supported by the mayor's office in the predecessor of
Thank
council,
you.
but not me.
Thank you. Okay, the next question. 1 second. Okay, so there's quite a few questions about the homeless crisis. I'm going to go ahead and keep them broken up because I know it's a really strong subject and probably needs some time to it. So the question is, the first one, what do you plan to do about the homeless crisis? And we are starting with Steve, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. So, with my experience, I've patrolled our district as a peace officer. I was a lead sergeant responsible for servicing the red line transit corridor that goes through CD13. And I guarantee you all here tonight that of all the opponents in this race, I've had the most contact with our unhoused neighbors. Feet on the ground, literally hundreds, by responding to their trauma on the street, and mostly by transporting them to drug treatment facilities, sobering facilities, and LA County Hospital. So when I'm talking to you about my homeless plan, I hope there's more questions. I'm not talking to you about theories and wishful thinking, but real quick, what we need to do is reimagine sustainable solutions that support a housing first model for the rapid placement of individuals into permanent supportive housing with low entry barriers. It's the cost effective thing to do. It's the ethical thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Hugo, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Fatima. Well, the first thing I would say that obviously this is the issue of the day, and the way us Angelenos interact with the homeless crisis, it is just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath that are large structural changes that we need to change, and so we got to have a very long-term vision. But what I would say about now is I would stop the policies that only spend your taxpayer dollars and move the crisis moves the crisis backwards. Sweeps, which is the #1 way of dealing with the homeless community, simply do not work. They re-traumatize the homeless population. The last personal belongings are taken and put into the trash. And the result is they move from one part of the block to the other part of the block, and then they go to another part of the block, and then eventually they come back to us. That doesn't work. What we need to do is start with housing, build those relationships of trust, and get them into permanent supportive housing. It's not going to be a long-term, it's not going to be a short-term fix, but we got to have the vision and stop making policies. Thank you, Fatima.
Thank you. Mitch, same question.
Let's start this conversation about homelessness with what I've done. Over a 3-month process last year, we housed 200 individuals who were encamped at Echo Park Lake. They were under duress by a drug dealer and a pimp. We rescued them and put everyone under a roof and on a path to wellness. We then reopened the lake, and it's been safe, clean, and secure ever since. It'll stay that way. Since that time, we've stood up hundreds of more transitional housing solutions, including 2 tiny cabin communities. The homelessness population in Echo Park community has been drastically reduced. Over the last 2 weeks, we've housed 27 people along Selma in Hollywood, brought them indoors. So let's talk about solutions that we've already enacted, and the fact that no district outside of downtown has built more transitional and permanent supportive housing. It's what we've got to do, and I look forward to the next question about homelessness.
Thank you, Mitch. Kate, same question.
Listen, there's no silver bullet. This is going to take an incredible amount of work. You can look at a lot of details that I have on my website at kateforcouncil.la. I have a whole homelessness plan that digs in. But I was part of a team in the West Side who actually helped get 200 people off of Venice Boardwalk. And now without little to no police involvement, right? And now 70 of those people are in permanent housing. And that's how we permanently end homelessness. Listen, we need shelters and we need tiny homes and we need safe camping. We are in a crisis. We need all of the above. But how we permanently end homelessness is permanent homes. And then the other piece is that we need to keep our neighbors housed, because we have housed 60,000 people over the last 3 years, and even more homelessness people, even more people are falling into homelessness every day. It is not only the right thing to do, but is a hell of a lot less expensive to keep our neighbors housed. And that's where our focus should be.
Thank you, Kate. Same subject, different question. How feasible is your homeless crisis plan? What are the steps that you will take to actually make it happen? And our first person is Hugo, whenever you're ready.
I think the immediate, the encampments, the way people interact with homeless, the majority of folks, how they interact with them, I think that is absolutely feasible. When I talk to the homeless community, they tell me two things. That number one, they don't trust the city because they've been lied to multiple times. And even if you add up all the beds that we have in the city, we only have beds for 39% of the unhoused population. So even if everyone took a bed, we would still have 60% on the street. But they've been lied to many, many, many times. And second, what they're offered is not a permanent home. And so we have to do both. We have to build those relationships with them, because the only way they interact with the city is these violent sweeps that happen. But we have to have the housing lined up. That is how we're going to deal with the encampments, the structural issues, because every single day, 2 people enter into homelessness and we house 1 person. So those structural issues will take long, but the encampments, you have my commitment that we will staff people to work on that immediately.
Thank you, Hugo. Mitch, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I just gave you an example of the feasibility with what we've done in the 13th district, including using my discretionary funding to hire outreach practitioners that understand homelessness, because they've lived it. They've gone through alcohol and drug addiction and recovery, or have been incarcerated. They have an immediate credibility that helps get people on a path to wellness. I now have them all over the district. They're running my Circle program, which is an unarmed response to people in crises that are not calls for violence. That's the way we do it. We fund it, and no one else fights for funding from Sacramento like I do. One of my efforts led to $1.2 billion to address homelessness in the county and the city, but we have other issues that the county needs to do better for us in relation to addiction and mental health. And I'm taking on the county health department in that relation, and that's directly related to homelessness.
Thank you, Mitch. Kate, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, listen, this is hard work. This is not going to end overnight. And I understand that people are mad, and people should be mad, and that our empathy, a lot of people's empathy has been exhausted. And I get that. And I alone, each of us cannot fix this on our own. This is going to take a very high level of coordination with the mayor, with the county board of supervisors, with LAHSA. But it's not just, day to day, like, I don't know, every now and then sort of coordination. This is the kind of coordination that is required from the top down. Every elected official, every department needs to be coordinating on the homelessness crisis every day, because this is a humanitarian crisis that we now have 40,000 people living on our street, 30% of whom are Black. It disproportionately affects gay and trans youth, right? So we have to be coordinating every step of the way.
Thank you. Steve, the same question whenever you're ready.
So my plan is not only feasible, but it's realistic. The first 100 days of my term will be used to confront our homeless crisis through landmark efforts within our district, which can be modeled by other council members. I want to be the model for other council members. So I have a 3-phase plan to house the most vulnerable segments of the chronically unhoused neighbors within 1 year. So this demographic consists of approximately 1,200 individuals, which my team just, we discovered of the over 4,000, there are 1,200 chronically severely unhoused. And during that phase one would be to identify the critical segment, which be inclusive of seniors, LGBT youth, which are oftentimes the victimized, and as well as those with multiple constraints like mental and physical disabilities and substance abuse. Subsequent phases in my plan would include collaborative placement efforts with nonprofits, many of whom I've already have relationships, such as the People Concerned, LA Family Housing, and things like that. So we need to rapidly create affordable units. I can do it for less than half the cost and at a faster rate.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, one more question about the homeless crisis, and then we will take a 5-minute break because we have a lot of questions. I hope that's okay with everyone, only doing a 5-minute. So I'll combine the two actually. How will your homeless crisis plan be paid for? And which two organizations best serve our homeless and CD13 with mental health and addiction problems to assist them into housing, and why? And this starts, let me just double check here. We will start with Mitch, and then I will ask if you're typing away to mute yourself because I hear some typing. Go ahead, Mitch, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I gave you a sense of how we pay for it. We fight for the dollars from the state with which we are not getting our fair share and haven't been for a long time. I'll be leading another delegation of my colleagues to Sacramento to fight for our fair share of dollars in this unprecedented budget surplus. We have to have the funding to implement any plan that we have. I have a template. It's successful. We're reducing homelessness in the 13th district. We're getting people on a path to wellness. And that's how you do it. And it does take hard work. It takes coalition building, but it also takes challenging the mayor or challenging the county supervisors. Because if everyone makes nice all the time, nothing gets done, and that's the status quo. So we need a new system, and I'm helping develop that. And I hope to have the support of my colleagues, and I think I will, and the constituents that I represent. Thank you.
Okay, next is Kate. Kate, whenever you're ready.
Would you repeat the first question again?
Sure, of course. How will your homeless crisis plan be paid for? Which two organizations best serve our homeless in CD13 with mental health and addiction problems to assist them into housing, and why?
Yeah, so in terms of how we're paying for this, it's one of the reasons why I back the Unite to House LA ballot initiative, which would increase the property transfer tax on homes over $3 million to build more of this housing, and not the way we did it with HHH, which was a mess, but in a much more nimble way that's more thoughtful about making sure that we are using the resources wisely. So that's number one, and obviously using more of the funds that making sure that we get more funds from the state and federal government at this stage. And I think that in terms of orgs that are doing amazing work, one of the orgs that I work with a lot of homeless service providers. I'm a policy wonk, as you can hear, but I do outreach every weekend. And one of the orgs that I love is like the Center in Hollywood, which is thinking really thoughtfully about not only getting people inside, but through really thoughtful services.
Thank you, Kate. Steve, same question. Let me know if you'd like me to repeat it.
Yeah, could you repeat it?
Sure. How will your homeless crisis plan be paid for, and which two organizations best serve our homeless in CD13 with mental health and addiction problems to assist them into housing, and why?
Okay, so I'll tell you how it's not going to be paid for. I know there's a contingent of people who want to put on the upcoming ballot an initiative to tax us more, to put more money into homelessness, which is absurd to me and quite insulting. You know, with regard to HHH, we have $1 billion bond, actually over $1 billion bond, to address the issue. My problem is it's mismanaged. So the money is there, it's just not a priority. I can also tell you where the money has been going. It's been going to consultants and it's been going to advisors. So that's where a lot of the money, if you want to track it, you know, with the assessor did his survey of how the money was being spent. You know, you've all read what happened with that. So it's not a money issue. I want to make that very clear. There's more than enough money. With regard to the places I've worked with Hope of the Valley, which is actually, you know, I've followed them. They don't work in our district, but I'm so impressed by the way they've implemented their tiny homes.
Do you want to quickly say your last organization, just the name of it, because I don't want to leave them out.
Okay. And then also John Misseri is a friend of my team with the People Concern.
Okay, thank you. It's for a good cause. And then Hugo, would you like me to repeat the question? Or
I got it, Fatima. Thank you so much.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the first thing we have to do is stop doing policies that are wasteful. Sweeps, like I mentioned, they don't solve the crisis. They just move people around the city. That saves us a lot of money there. But I don't think there's a lack of money, although I do agree with the transfer tax that's going to come up. I think we do need it. But I'll tell you, as a hotel worker organizer, there are currently lots of hotels that are sitting empty. They've been sitting empty for the last 2 years since the pandemic started. We're waiting for permanent buildings, permanent supportive housing to come on board. The buildings are there. They're sitting empty, and the city and the mayor have the power to take those for the public good. And so we have to be bold in these decisions, not be afraid to make those. I think the situation has gotten so out of control. We need to do this. And as far as how we do it, well, number one, I will put minimum 4 people from my staff dedicated on this issue. We currently have 0. And we have to unlock the potential of the neighborhood, like organizations like SELA and Feed the People. Folks want to help. They want to get involved.
Thank you. Okay, great. So that ends the first half of this. We'll take a 5-minute break, work on our technology issues, and then we will be right back. So stay tuned.
I appreciate the union break, Fatima.
Of course. Let's get everybody back on the screen, please. We're going to continue with the 1-minute questions, and Kate will be going first, but we'll just give Steve just another moment. There he is. Hi, Steve. Okay. Next question. 1 minute, starting with Kate. What are your thoughts about the Silver Lake Master Plan? What do you envision for the reservoir complex? Kate, whenever you're ready. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Hi. So I really applaud the community for their incredibly hard work on the master plan. I think it both promotes sort of the environment, the ecology, while also making it an exciting place for residents. And I'm very excited about that. But my one concern is that if we're going to attract more visitors, we need a sustainable way of getting to the reservoir that doesn't require more parking. And so we need to put in protected bike lanes, and not just there, but actually ones that connect to the rest of the city, so that we can all get there and do it in a way that isn't disruptive to the neighborhood.
Thank you, Kate. Next is Steve, and whenever you're ready.
You know, so as an individual who I stated previously, I frequent the lake like very often, quite often. So I've got my concerns, you know, even with the over pedestrianization of the lake, I think that could be a huge problem, not to mention the mobility constraints. And I think with regard to Silver Lake, it really is a jewel of the community that I'd like to protect. And I think the needs of the commercialism and residents must be always balanced. There always has to be a community buy-in and a weigh-in into this master plan. I'm just going to be very honest with you. I don't support the master plan for certain reasons, but I'll highlight a couple of them. But one of them, I think that it is being used as a legacy project. I don't support the removal of the fence. And I think the biggest deficiency for me would be the lack of planned infrastructure to support the increase in traffic. The impact on neighborhoods is going to be much larger than anticipated. So thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Steve. Next is Hugo. Hugo, whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Fatima. Yeah, I've seen the renderings. You know, some of them are very nice, very beautiful. But you know, we were all on another debate where the community was saying that the input is not being taken into account. You know, the resources being allocated to Silver Lake could be used somewhere else for other issues in the city. And so I think there's a consensus on what we should do with Silver Lake. You know, in some of the renderings, personally, I think it looks more like something, you know, at a Waldorf Astoria. No offense to Waldorf Astoria, they're very beautiful, but we need to make sure that these spaces are welcoming to everybody and they're not accelerating gentrification and racial banishment. So we got to think about that. And also how we make them more inclusive through more protected bike lanes. You know, and it's a beautiful park, but I think we have to really look at it where we put our precious resources. And if the community says, let's put it somewhere else, somewhere it's more important, then I think we should follow that. Because I do think when we put money in one area, we're essentially taking it off from another area. And so there's a lot of parts of the district that could use more green space, as we previously discussed on this debate.
Thank you, Hugo. Mitch, same question. Let me know if you'd like me to repeat it.
I'm good, thank you. Well, this is a residential community with its culture and its history, and the community will be at the center of whatever may happen there in the future. The Silver Lake Reservoir is the front yard of so many of the homes that front the entire reservoir complex. And they have high expectations that their interests will be heard and listened to. And those expectations are fair. the people who will be most affected by whatever we do there are the folks that we need to listen to with great care and consideration, because they're going to be most affected by the change. And I think those are the values that we need to bake into this future of the reservoir complex, with a nod to the wildlife.
Thank you. Okay, same topic, different question, and we will be starting with Steve this time. How do you envision paying for the realization of the Silver Lake Master Plan? Will this money take away from other essential goals in our district? And Steve, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so as I stated earlier, I'm not 100% on board with the plan. So given that, I haven't thought of the financing of it. I think the plan is wrought with lots of it's lacking in infrastructure support, vehicular traffic, over pedestrianization, and quite frankly, I think adding a snack bar and canoe boats to a lake that's used to replenish fires. Actually, people don't know this, but fire helicopters actually use the lake to replenish their supply of water. So again, I'm not on board with the plan. So I'm not going to answer about how I would even begin to finance it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Hugo, you're next, and whenever you're ready.
Fatima, my apologies. May you repeat the question, please?
Of course. How do you envision paying for the realization of the Silver Lake Master Plan? Will this money take away from other essential goals in our district?
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I think that luckily we have a lot of state and federal money coming in through the infrastructure bills, and luckily we have a surplus in California. So I do think the money is there, but it's about where do we invest it? How do we make our city our district more equitable? I would say that it certainly will take it away from other areas. Like I would cite a stat, right? CD13 has 4 of the most deadliest neighborhoods for pedestrians. 4 of them rank in the top 10%. I think when you think about money and where we invest it, would we rather have safer neighborhoods to make sure they're not in the high injury network, or invested in, as Steve very eloquently put it, canoe boats and something that's more like, those kind of issues? I think people would rather say, let's save lives. When the number one cause of death for people in elementary and middle school is car crashes, I think we need to remedy those more than trying to beautify the park.
Thank you, Hugo. Mitch, you're next. Just let me know if you'd like me to repeat the question.
Thank you. I have it, but thank you so much. Pots of funding are limited to specific uses. So transportation funding would not be used for the future improvements or amenities coming to the Silver Lake Master Plan complex. So it absolutely would not usurp monies from any other areas. Grant funding can come from a variety of sources. That's how we've built bridges across the LA River. It's how we are revitalizing the Los Angeles River. It's how we are rebuilding some of our community centers and our recreation centers. Where there is a will, there is a way. And I, for one, have no fear of the future whatsoever, because I have the confidence in this community and in whatever the vision that the community wants to see realized is the vision that I will fight for. And we will put the financial plan to make it happen. I have experience at doing that. It takes leadership and it takes experience. And I look forward to the challenge.
Thank you. Kate, you're next. And just let me know if you'd like me to repeat it.
Okay, Fatima, thank you. So yes, we can't be letting this, the plan take away from other projects in our community. I think we've seen that in a number of different areas in CD13 alone, including the Hollywood Master Plan, which I worry sometimes sucks the oxygen out of doing other work in LA, including, as Ugo mentioned, those making our streets safer. That money for those high injury network streets is actually already in the Vision Zero funding in the budget. We're just not spending it. So it's a matter of knowing that money is there and then spending it adequately. And also, it's not just about the money, it's also about the energy that a council member puts into doing that work. So we have to, yes, let's use that federal and state money for the Silver Lake Reservoir Master Plan, but let's not ignore the other pressing needs in the district and find the money to do those things too.
Okay, the next question, the first person to answer will be Hugo. What are some specific actions that you would be willing to take to help small business owners in the district? Whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much for this question. You know, as far as when I was on the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council, we actually did outreach during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic. We masked up, put our face shields, and we were talking to small business owners because a lot of them were devastated and didn't come back. And I must say, I learned a lot through that process because, and this is what I learned. Rent forgiveness is something that a lot of the folks were asking for, not giving them money to pay the rent, but rent forgiveness, right? A similar vote was taken on this at the city council to turn tenant debt to commercial debt. And I hate to say this, but the council member was the deciding vote against that. And so I would have extended that precedent to small businesses so that they can be protected. And again, I think experimenting with overlay zones, we know there's a lot of massive gentrification happening. Small businesses are being priced out of the neighborhood. So we also have to protect them, make sure they don't get price gouged and turn this into, you know, a very luxurious place.
Thank you, Hugo. And Mitch, would you like me to repeat the question?
I have it. Thank you, though.
Of course.
So about 5 years ago, I rolled out my Open for Business initiative, which reduced greatly the steps that it takes to get permit renewals, especially for businesses and restaurants that have functioned with no complaints whatsoever. So we've reduced some of those steps through policy and ordinance. We'll continue along those lines. During the pandemic, I put a limit on third-party delivery apps that really were harming restaurants. So that was in place. And my own experience, I come from the private sector. I had to make a living in the private sector before I ever got into public service at age 41. So I know what it's like to manage a balance sheet, to pay employees and make payroll and understand the Cal OSHA laws and take care of employees. No one else in this race has that experience, and I do. And that informs my approach to helping businesses.
Thank you. Okay. Kate, you're next, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. Well, as I said at the top, I think the small businesses are sort of a backbone of our community in CD13. And we have to do a number of things. As I said at the top, these last 2 years have been devastatingly, I mean, I don't have to tell you this, have been devastatingly difficult for small businesses. And we have asked too much, and we need to be better partners. So we do need to cut that red tape. You know, the city often bends over backwards for something like the Academy Awards. But as I said, you know, before 2020, you needed like $100,000 to get a parklet installed. We need to extend that innovative thinking beyond COVID. And we also need something like one access point online for all city services, for people who are using those city services, including small businesses. We just need to make it easy. Other ideas are, you know, one of the reasons I support a public bank, because they can help support small businesses. And one last thing is that, you know, we have
I do have to cut you short. We have a lot of questions to get to. Okay. And Steve, whenever you're ready.
So as a former business owner and a USC Business School graduate, I can tell you firsthand the trials of sustaining a self-owned financial entity. But when elected, what I will do is I'll help big businesses gain access to capital with equitable funding that can support their long-term growth. Lower interest rates and tax incentives are some solutions that I think are no-brainers. And then more importantly, getting that federal money out to businesses. Why do we why is the current administration sitting on money? We need to get the money out, and we need to prioritize that for our local businesses. And the other thing I think we can do is we need to encourage shop local, not using it as a photo op on the day of shop local, but we need to shop local all year. And with regard to brick and mortar businesses, we need to encourage them and incentivize them going online. Going online will help digitize and streamline their businesses. So these are just a few of the solutions that I have, and I think it is my expertise.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Okay. The next question, this time Mitch will go first. I'm going to combine this question, but I'll read both of them. What do you plan to do to keep businesses in Silver Lake safe? How will you combat the increasing crime in Silver Lake against residents, visitors, and business owners and their employees? And whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. This is where relationships really matter. I know my senior lead officers. I've always been big on community policing and bringing groups together to make neighborhoods safer and more secure. The police department has a great role. The fact that my friends in the police department become demonized by all of this hate speech against public safety officers does not sit well with me. We can support law enforcement while enacting change that reduces the number of shootings for unarmed people. And I've led on those reform measures. Business safety is important. If you don't feel safe where you live or where you work, there is no quality of life. So combating crime is big, and we are going to look at the upcoming budget to have better technology so we can have better efficiency in policing as well.
Thank you. Kate, you're next, and I can repeat the question if you like.
No, I think I got it. Thank you, Fatima. So you don't want to run a business in a community where you don't feel safe, and your customers don't want to come to your business if they don't feel safe. So that is the #1 job of government, is to make our communities safe. And I hear it all the time that people don't in their communities today. And so when we start with, I think a lot of times we talk about safety, people are also talking about homelessness and are feeling the effects of the fact that, like, you run a cafe or a clothing store, you didn't sign up to be a homeless services mental health care worker. You should be able to call a 3-digit number and have a mental health care worker arrive within minutes to assist in a situation that makes you feel safe because someone is having a crisis. And you know what? If we have that, we will be able to free up the police to be doing the work that they should be doing, so that they don't just so that when you actually have a crisis that is an armed crisis, you have someone who can show up quickly.
Thank you. Steve, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so to cut to the chase, I'm going to directly confront this huge uptick in smash and grab and follow home robberies. You know, as a police officer, we're seeing crime throughout CD13 that we've never seen before. In all of my over 20 years of living in this community, I've never seen some of the things we've seen. So I want y'all to know that the criminal acts that are occurring are very coordinated by gang members and criminal crews that work in highly organized fashion. These aren't just randomized knuckleheads. It's extremely sophisticated. So through collaboration with my partners, I know many men and women who work at LAPD, I would propose a specialized task force with reciprocal funding to address this epidemic issue. When City Hall cut the policing budget, some of the first programs to go were the specialized units that address these types of crimes. Also, I wanted to highlight the slow response times are directly linked to the cut in budget.
Thank you, Steve. Hugo, let me know if you'd like me to repeat the question.
Okay. Thank you, Fatima. I got it. And thank you. Look, I want to say, obviously, I grew up in a very violent neighborhood. And so I resonate with this. And, you know, I went to school, I studied criminology, I went to UC Irvine. And this is what I learned, that armed officers don't prevent crime. Armed officers show up after it happens. What we're talking about is how do we prevent crime from happening, right? And even the LA Times article came out that police officers, 90% of their time is dealing with non-violent acts. And so we could do more with less. We know that an LAPD officer costs over $100,000. Mental health folks at de-escalation neighborhood liaisons who can respond immediately, because all the small owners and workers at those businesses will tell you, they call the police and they show up 3 hours later because they're dealing with other stuff. We want to feel safe. We want to get to the root and prevent crime. Then we need to invest in those alternative systems.
Thank you, Hugo. Okay. The next question is about street safety, and Kate will start us off. Are you planning to redesign streets in CD13 to slow down drivers and make walking and biking safer for people of all ages and abilities? If so, what streets and what type of improvements to achieve these priorities? I saw another question in the Q&A about concerns of not being heard when they have issues on their streets that they have reported that are dangerous. So Kate, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, we need to make our streets safer, and we need to make structural improvements to our streets. And we have to do so in a way that allows the community to say how, right? Not no. Because oftentimes the loudest voices who want a particular aspect of their street to remain the same get to dictate how we have our streets. And what we need is an interconnected, we need interconnected bike lanes, we need bollards and other features that make our streets safer. We need to spend that money that I mentioned that's already allocated in Vision Zero to make our streets safer. So I'm so excited to actually, implement the mobility plan in so many different ways. It's unacceptable that the pedestrian deaths actually went up last year. That's not the right direction. And when we talk about public safety, like the question before, I consider this a public safety issue as well, and it's something I'm incredibly passionate about.
Thank you, Kate. Steve, just let me know if you'd like me to repeat the question.
So with regard to safety in the streets, a little fact here, with regard to the potholes that we have in our streets, the city pays nearly $1 billion in lawsuits because of bikers and others that are injured as a result of potholes. It's a very simple fix that we could do with the with the DOT, but for some reason it hasn't happened. I'm not sure, merely repairing our streets will make us not only safer, but we pay out less in lawsuits. And as I said earlier, definitely I'm all for slowing down the speed limit by just even a mere 5 miles per hour can have a significant impact. And as I also said earlier, when we can make our community safe for an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old, we know we've hit the mark. But when I talk to parents in my neighborhood, they do not feel that they're not safe with their kids out on the streets with bikes unless they're in their driveway. And I told you about my aunt who's almost 80. She's vehemently afraid of crossing a street, walking in the area. So again, traffic tables. Thank you.
Hugo, let me know if you'd like me to repeat the question.
I got it. Thank you so much, Fatima. As I mentioned earlier, the Mobility Plan 2035 was studied thoroughly and voted on in 2015, 7 years ago. And up until this point, only 7% of it has been implemented. The study's already done. And as I mentioned, the high injury network, we have 4 of the most deadliest neighborhoods. What we can do right now is support the Healthy Streets LA initiative. Their activists are going out there to collect signatures to put it on the ballot, to mandate for the city to do the thing they already voted on. But you know what? If I were the council member right now, I wouldn't be leaving up to activists to do this work, because city council can put the exact initiative on the ballot tomorrow. All we need is 8 council members to agree to it, and they don't have to go through the arduous process of collecting 65,000 signatures to push the city to do the thing they already voted on. And so the plans are already there. It's about implementation and the willpower to do it.
Thank you, Hugo. Mitch, Let me know if you'd like me to repeat the question and whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Fatima. I have it. We completed the Silver Lake streetscape pre-pandemic. We realigned Sunset at Sanborn crosswalk to make it safer. I built Polka Dot Plaza while I worked for Eric Garcetti, and we're about to have a complete renovation of it. We have redesigned several streets for safer walking and biking. We put a full traffic signalization at Edgecliff and Sunset. We did a traffic signalization at Van Pelt and Silver Lake Boulevard near the Recreation Center. I put in the first speed tables on major boulevards in the city of Los Angeles at Temple, and another one, actually several, and more on the way on Riverside Drive. I would love to explore that very creatively and specifically in Silver Lake. And again, the Michelle Terena streetscape. Pedestrian safety and circulation is my #1 transit priority, but all the others are great too, and we need to do it all.
Thank you. The next question will start with Steve. When you have conflicting actions or opinions surrounding council districts, how do you plan to achieve your goals? And I will combine that with how do you overcome stalled items in committees? And how do you envision working with the mayor office?
So with regard to that question, I think the #1 requirement or a top requirement to hold on elected position as a city council member is leadership. And not just leadership, but leadership with integrity, which is severely lacking. It's one of the main reasons I'm running. You know, we've had 3 council members get arrested for federal, as was stated earlier. So what you have to simply be is a coalition builder, you know, and that's something that I can be. I can be a bridge. We all, probably most of the time, none of us agree, but there needs to be a consensus builder, someone who could reach across the aisle and talk to both sides and come up with the best solution for Angelenos. And so I think, you know, being a leader and a collaborator and listening, those are key attributes that I'd use to make those things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Hugo, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Fatima. You know, this issue, I'm very intimate with this issue because of the work that I've done with my union. We've helped pass raising the minimum wage for workers across the city. We've had to push council members to do regulation on Airbnb with all these party houses in Silver Lake and taking up the housing stock. And I'll tell you what I learned during that process is that in order for you to get anything done in City Hall, you need to build more power and more consensus from the residents and from the people than the people who have elected these folks. It is no lie to me that people in power, money, developers, they are the ones who have put these electeds into positions of power. And the only time they listen is when we build enough of a coalition to make them do the thing that is right. And so I'm trying to take the same approach to City Hall that I've done for thousands of workers across the city and be a voice for the people who've been marginalized from this process.
Thank you, Hugo. Mitch, just let me know if you'd like me to repeat the question.
I think it was dealing with conflicts, stalled initiatives or motions.
Stalled initiatives, working with other council members, and dealing with the mayoral office.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. I'm ready. I have a much less negative view of this work. I am a public servant. I've always been a public servant. I have a public service agenda, not a political agenda. I'm accountable to my constituents. I always have been. Anyone who looks at my social media sees that I'm out there all the time, in all the neighborhoods across the district, dealing with constituents regularly, practically every single day. I cut my teeth on dealing within conflicts in neighborhoods between council members, working out compromises that for the betterment of the community, dealing with stalled initiatives. The elephant bullhook ban was one that was stalled that I revived, and we approved it. Worked very well with mayor and other leaders, and we push each other and challenge one another. That's how healthy tension works. And I've always imbued that.
Thank you. Kate, whenever you're ready, or if you'd like me to repeat the question.
No, that's okay. Thank you. It was about community, the city hall, and conflict. Thank you. So the number one thing that a council member can do at any of these fora is to build trust and to be the kind of person who, no matter whether or not you agree or disagree, is always coming to the table and is always open and being straightforward and being honest about what their position is. When it comes to the community, you know, we may not always agree. I said it, right? We may not always agree, but I will always be there to listen, and I will always be there for those conversations and make sure that community input is being incorporated. And one of the things I'd love to do is polling, right? So that not just the loudest voices are heard when it comes to creating policy. I also think that, you know, in City Hall, we both have to create that trust and be talking to all of the council members, no matter or not we agree or disagree. And sometimes we have to fight. And that's part of being a smart and effective leader.
Thank you, Kate. I know we started late. That's why I'm moving a little bit into our danger zone of timing. I hope no one minds staying a little bit longer. We just have so many great questions. So the person who will start this off is Hugo. Who will pay for programs to keep Silver Lake safe? Have you thought of private security for the area?
I think we have plenty of money in the budget right now. LAPD has over half of the discretionary funds of the city. And I think the vision that we are we're talking to voters as is how can we use that money and get more out of it? As I mentioned earlier, a police officer is over $100,000. Response times are slow. They're inadequately prepared to deal with the actual things that they deal with, the mental health, conflicts in the neighborhood. They do traffic tickets and, most of the time is doing reports. That's over 90% of the time. They don't deal with violent crime. We're talking about mental health, unarmed response teams, neighborhood liaisons, programs that have been proven to work to prevent crime, jobs programs, creating recreational time for juveniles between the hours of 2 and 8, which we know bring juvenile crime down. All these studies have been done. They've been done in Chicago, New York, Minnesota. We got to bring them to Los Angeles. We cannot go back to this rhetoric that existed in the 90s that only disappeared the problem, never got to the root of it.
Thank you. Next is Mitch, and just please let me know if you'd like me to repeat the question.
I think I'm good, thank you. So who will pay for programs to keep Silver Lake safe? That will be reflected in our budget priorities. I said this before, we can update our technology in policing and get so much more efficiency so that public safety officers can focus on quality of life issues. You know, the consistent loud party house or the Airbnb party house. Anyone who is a kid knows that when all eyes and ears are on you, you don't do things that you're not supposed to do. And in the real world, in the second largest city in the United States, we actually need suppression to make sure that young people don't make bad decisions that put them toward a life of trouble. And that's like a community safety partnership, which we've rolled out in South LA that's extremely successful, working with our public safety officers. The budget will be reflected in that priority. And we're about to debate it.
Thank you, Mitch. Kate, whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Our budget does need to reflect our priorities of making our city safer. And part of that is allocating resources to mental health professionals who can actually help in the crises that we see every day on our street and are incredibly scary for people. And so as we move that money to someone to making sure that we have a 3-digit number that people can call and have a mental health professional show up within minutes, we also then can make sure that the police are being efficient and effective with their time. You know, the police only solved half of the murders last year. That's not acceptable. So it is about making sure that we are prioritizing resources, and it is about being smart about how we spend those resources.
Thank you, Kate. Steve, whenever you're ready, if you'd like me to repeat the question, I can.
I'm good, thank you. You know, so this whole concept of defunding the police department, I think it's a progressive ideology that has no merit. LAPD already operates with a strained budget that doesn't support the appropriate staffing levels. So these defund efforts lack an understanding of the actual impact budget reductions have on communities and crime in general. For example, slow response times, lack of task forces to deal with smash and grab and follow home robberies. In 2020, when City Hall slashed the budget by nearly $200 million, serious felonies increased in our district by 140%. It's undeniable data. So society often looks at law enforcement as the misaligned cog in a broken system, but in actuality, these systemic inequities, they exist in housing, they exist in education and employment, and they're fed into the criminal justice system. So, collectively, we all need to do better.
Thank you, Steve. And then our last 1 minute question. So there's quite a few questions about the mega housing developments that people are seeing being built and the lack of parking related to them and the problems that it has caused in residential communities, according to the asker. So I will start off with Mitch on this question.
Thank you. Just making sure I got the question. Appreciate that.
Sure, no problem.
Yes, so mega housing developments. We really need not develop a home to fill up the entire envelope of a parcel. That's a real problem. This has been a real issue mostly on the west side. We do not need it coming into the 13th district. Planning and land use is a very complex and complicated matter that we deal with on a regular basis because there's so many pressures in the 13th district. I have the best planning director at City Hall and a planning team that is really the best in the business. I also have a field staff that works really well with constituents block by block. Parking in residential communities is an issue. Preferential parking districts work quite well. We have them, we expand them. We have to strike that balance in coexisting with our commercial areas. But my office is always ready and willing and has worked with many communities on these efforts.
Thank you, Mitch. Kate, whenever you're ready.
Sorry, I thought I was on mute. So parking is a huge issue. If you live in Los Angeles, you know that parking is an issue in our lives. And for example, in Silver Lake, right off of Sunset, there's permit parking, and a lot of community members and business owners want to get rid of that permit parking. But a lot of those homes nearby are being used for illegal Airbnbs. And so it makes it difficult to then remove the permit parking when we don't actually have people living in there, in those homes. So we need to do better enforcement against something like Airbnb. We have all these great laws in Los Angeles, and then we are terrible at enforcing. And then we also need, as I said earlier, to create more ways of getting to these communities without a car. We need to make bus service actually usable. And I used to take the metro downtown every day to work. We need to make those connections to the metro more usable.
Thank you. Okay. Steve, whenever you're ready.
I believe there's no disconnect between these large, often ugly, buildings that are, literally crammed. There's several near my home where we live. There's these large units, like every square space of that lot is crammed to the hilt with with an apartment or some form of a, a livable space. I do feel, I'm just going to say it. I think that there's a reason why those are built to the degree and the rate that they are. If those are the people that you associate with mostly, i.e. development, then likely those are the people that they're going to get their projects built. So when you look at that, is there any wonder there's a lack of affordable housing? Is it any wonder that we have a problem creating a supply of housing for our unhoused neighbors and severely low income housing? So there's a direct correlation there. With regard to parking, yes, LA is notorious for parking.
Thank you.
All right.
Hugo, would you like me to repeat the question?
Thank you, Fatima. I got it. Yeah, thank you for this question. Yeah, I think that we need to make developments more equitable, but I believe the crux of the question was how we deal with parking, right? And so right now, Metro has a policy of trying to replicate how white collar workers travel through the city, right? And in the process, they have gutted their core ridership. The reality is the people who take Metro or buses are essential workers who make less than $20,000 a year. They don't have a car. But I'll tell you what the policy of Metro has created. When we reduce bus lines, when we don't incentivize the routes that essential workers do, what happens is they now have to get a car. And they have to get a little beater to be able to drive. And so we have to focus on the core ridership of Metro. And that is not light rail, those buses. Make them comfortable, more bus lines, more frequency. Don't make it punitive to miss your bus. If we do that, we can get more parking because people won't need to use their car.
Thank you, Hugo. So the last portion of this is our rapid fire, which is it's usually a little bit of the lighter questions that can be answered pretty quickly. Just doing our little guide here. We'll start off with Kate. And the first question is, what skills do you have that people might not know about?
I can sing, and I really pride myself on being able to build trust with people. And I think that, and the listening part, you've heard us do a lot of talking tonight, but the listening is the thing that I'm most proud of.
Thank you, Kate. Next is Steve, same question, and I'll put up a little 5 when you have 5 seconds left since there's only 25 seconds.
Okay, could you repeat that one more time, Fatina?
Sure. What are skills or talents you have that people may not know about?
Okay, so I'm a Gulf War veteran. I went to the Air Force Academy, and so I was a flight crew navigator while I served on active duty. So I know what it's like to put people's lives to protect life and to put your life at stake for something. So I'm not sure if that kind of answers it, but just off the top of my head.
Thank you, Steve. Hugo, same question.
Yeah, this is an easy one. I'm a really good organizer. Working with immigrant housekeepers and up and coming actresses in the front of the house, which two very different worlds and goals, have taught me how to listen and bring people together. I am endorsed by DSA and the Miracle Mile Democratic Club, which represents Larchmont, two very polar opposites groups. I'm also endorsed by Sunrise and fossil fuel worker unions. Very opposite. I know how to bring people together.
Thank you, Hugo. And Mitch.
I'll keep this light. I crack jokes, I paint, I draw, I build things, I garden, and I watch classic films on TCM every chance I get.
Great, thank you. Okay, next we will start with Steve. Who is your favorite teacher?
Wow, that's wow, great question.
You can take a moment.
Okay.
Because I know these are obvious.
So with regard to my faith organization, which I've been a member of, the SGI, for 20 years, it's a Buddhist faith organization. So one of our mentors is Daisaku Ikeda, and he's just this prolific leader that talks about, ways that in the modern world and daily life that we can instill valuing people. How do we most value people? So he's someone that I consider a mentor, a teacher. So I would say him. Not many people know of him, but that would be my answer.
Thank you, Steve. Let's see here, 1 second. Okay, and then Steve, oh yes, Hugo, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I have something in common with Steve. I would say another Buddhist teacher is Thich Nhat Hanh. I am a Buddhist. I became a Buddhist a few years ago, and his teachings have taught me to be loving, compassionate, deep listening, but also to engage in the world through this lens. I always find peace. He passed away last month. Our honorable teacher passed away, but he left a breadth of books, and they continue to guide me to this day.
Thank you. And Mitch, whenever you're ready.
My first grade teacher, Mrs. Ashford, God rest her soul. She plucked me out of that first grade class. I went to public schools and elevated me in ways that set me on a positive life. Then my sixth grade homeroom teacher, Mrs. Alexander, again, who plucked me out of class and put me into a gymnastics class, which led to a career in competitive gymnastics. And then Mr. Phelps in high school, who believed in my ability to become an architect, which I never did. But I think of my teachers lovingly. I miss them, and they guide me to this day.
Thank you. Thank you. We don't want to cut off the teacher name. So, Kate, you're next.
Yeah. So my first grade teacher, Lauren, I have a reading disability that's similar to dyslexia. It's a visual processing disorder, and it took me a very long time to learn how to read. And it's because of teachers like him that someone actually figured out that was the issue, that I wasn't just lazy or stupid or something like that. And it's the reason why I'm a lawyer today and that I worked in City Hall. So yeah, it's very meaningful to me. Thank you. What a great question.
Okay, next rapid fire question. And we will start with Hugo. Who influenced you to run for office?
Wow, the housekeepers I represent every single day. I realize that even though my job is very fulfilling, we change their lives, they get affordable healthcare, a living wage, but we don't build housing, we don't interact with transportation, we don't do the other things that involve their lives, and seeing them suffer and be banished from this district just propelled me to do more and try to be a better steward of the city.
Thank you. Mitch, whenever you're ready.
My partner of 30 years, George Brockman, for starters. And then Mr. Tom Labange, who took me on a trip around the block and back in 2011 and said, you need to run for public office because you have the head, the heart, and the hands to do the job. And his spirit is very much with me to this day. And then lastly, my late friend, Luce Batti, who always knew that I could do more in this realm, and she influences me still as well.
Thank you. Kate, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm incredibly moved and inspired by the people the unhoused people who I do outreach to every weekend. I've seen them pushed around and harassed and scrape by, and so those are the people who I think of every day.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, thank you. I know there's lots of questions still left, but we are going to move on to the final closing statements. They are 2-minute statements, and I will remind you to keep it about issues, keep it about yourself, and keep it clean. And we are going in reverse order, which means Mitch will start first, and then it will be Hugo, Steve, and Kate last. And just let me know when you're ready.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Silver Lake Chamber of Commerce, the Improvement Association, and the Reservoirs Conservancy for hosting tonight's forum. And thank you, Fatima, for an amazing job. I have a track record of getting big things done before enduring the most challenging time of the last 100 years in our city's history, the COVID-19 pandemic. No one cares or knows more about the district than I do. No one else has built affordable and permanent supportive housing, but I have. No one else has built pedestrian streetscapes or bike lanes across the 13th district, bridges across the LA River, is leading the city in a just transition to 100% renewable energy by 2035, or enacted the strongest renter protections in the nation during the pandemic, but I did. No one else here has built new playgrounds, public swimming pools, senior housing, senior centers, community gardens, or created farmers markets. No one else in this race knows how to secure the funding to make good things happen in our neighborhoods, but my team and I do. I am the only city council member who created small business grants to help keep 179 small businesses in the 13th district stay afloat. And that includes All Day Baby and the Sunset Free Clinic during the pandemic, and led in the creation of the biggest rent subsidy program in the United States, helping over 100,000 Los Angeles households who lost income due to COVID-19 pay their rent and their landlords from defaulting on their mortgages. I will continue to uplift businesses and neighborhoods while leading the city on our imperative to achieve 100% carbon-free renewable energy by 2035. I am honored to have the endorsements of my friends and colleagues, U.S. Senator Alex Padilla, Congressman Adam Schiff, County Supervisor Hilda Solis, and so many other local and elected officials, dozens of labor unions and business groups. But what matters most would be the honor in having your support for a third and final term. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mitch. Hugo, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Fatima. You've done a great job facilitating this. You got a lot on your hands, but we got through it and you did great.
Thank you.
But, I do want to say, I want to share a few stats. 600,000 Angelenos spend over 90% of their income on rent. 60% of the unhoused cite housing costs as the #1 reason they're on the streets. And in the last 10 years, homelessness has gone up 72% in this district. We are dealing with the issue of deep poverty and deep income inequality. We didn't arrive at this point all of a sudden. This was years and years of incorrect decisions being done. And all of a sudden now there is a lot of urgency around it. But instead of wasting millions of dollars pushing encampments from block to block, we have to offer housing, tenant protections, mental health and addiction services, and good union jobs. This is what keeps our economy from collapsing, renters from falling into homelessness, and what keeps our neighborhood healthy and safe for all. But how do we do it? We do it by building massive coalitions across all genders, races, classes, and identities, finding where our mutual interests intersects, and bringing people together on polarizing issues. I've been doing that in the district for the last 15 years, and I want to do the same for all of us. For our small businesses fighting to stay open during the pandemic, to the monolingual Spanish-speaking tenant being harassed by the landlord and in danger of being kicked out into the street, we can all agree our city is going in the wrong direction. Actually, we can all agree that our system is broken. If you want someone who's led broad coalitions to win against the worst elements of our society, from dumping Sheriff Joe Arpaio in Arizona to winning for the Senate Dems in Georgia, which I did last year through my Christmas break, and who can bring that experience to City Hall, then I'm your person. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hugo. Steve, you're up.
Thank you, Fatima, for all that you did to moderate. I wanted to thank our hosts also for putting this event together, and to everyone for being here tonight. Running for public office is tough. Although I disagree with many of my fellow candidates on how we get there, the one thing that we all agree on is that things must get better. The status quo isn't good enough anymore. We have some serious problems in Silver Lake and our community that have been ignored or being treated with nonsensical solutions that only serve City Hall's interest, or extreme ideologies that divide us. To finally resolve the issues, I'm a strong believer in learning from our community and our neighbors. I believe that citizen input is essential. Enough of these temporary fixes that help no one. I believe we must provide a vision toward long-term solutions. With all due respect, Councilmember O'Farrell, I respect you. I thank you for your public
Oh, we've lost you, Steve. Steve, we've lost you.
Okay. Our streets are
Let's
not
keep it very
safer.
clean, please.
Our streets are not safer. Our homeless problem has gotten worse. We know what must be done. We must find the will to do it. We don't need more promises and extreme new ideas. We need people who have the will to keep their word. You have to ask yourselves a question. Do I choose a dedicated public servant, or do I choose an individual who is looking for the next opportunity? The choice is yours. Growing up, my parents raised me with strong family values and a commitment to stand up for what's right and to give back to the community. Lessons and values that I've taken with me throughout my entire life. I fought to keep our communities safe. I fought to improve the quality of life for all people. I'm the right candidate to go to City Hall because I'm going to work for you, which I've done my entire life. I'm going to fight to improve the quality of life for everybody that I serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And Kate, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Fatima. This is an excellent panel, and I just am grateful to our hosts and to everyone who joined us tonight. To ensure all Angelenos, including our business community, can thrive in this city, I will bring my City Hall experience and our community's values with me to get to work on day one. I will bring to this work fresh eyes and a new perspective on ways we can do things differently and better. Angelenos, I think particularly in small business owners, are exhausted. The city has made it so hard to operate during the pandemic, and there's so much uncertainty in this world, you know, from interest rates going up to price of goods going up. Things are just getting harder. And here in LA, the homelessness crisis only seems to be getting worse, even though we've put more money into it. I understand that the city needs to see itself as your partner first and foremost. And while, as I said, we may not always see eye to eye, you will always know where I stand. And you will know me as a consistent, and communicative and excuse my language, ready to get shit done. So my door will always be open to you. This is just the start of our conversation. And I look forward to working hard hand in hand to create the city that works for all of us. To learn more about my candidacy and check out lots of specifics, please visit my website at kateforcouncil.la. And thank you again for spending the evening with us.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you all of you. It is no easy task to run for office. Some may think that something was questionably wrong with you because it's so much work and you have to have so many skills involved. So we're so grateful that you've even put yourself out there to run for office. So thank you so much. I think this is a good opportunity. If you'd like, if you can put in the chat, you could put your websites so people can reach out to you if they want more information. The primaries are in June.
We actually don't have a chat.
Oh, we don't. Okay.
Sorry, Fatima, we actually don't have a chat.
Okay. All right. Maybe we could send an email to everyone with their information, just their website, so people can reach out and get more information. We'll also put on votersedge.org, the League of Women Voters website. That way, as of April 1st, they should have it up so you can put your candidate information on there. And there's a few questions you can answer too. You can go onto that site and get your ballot information. Once again, primaries are in June, elections in November. Make sure you're registered to vote. And with that, I thank you all and have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Fatima, Natalie, Adam. Thank you for hosting.
And very
Yes, thank you, Natalie,
much.
Adam, for all your hard work.